welcome back. Law firms invest heavily in wellness programs, yet many employees feel these initiatives fail to address their real needs. The disconnect between employer intentions and employee experiences can lead to low participation rates, ineffective programs, and missed opportunities to improve overall well-being. So to explore bridging the wellness gap, addressing the employer-employee disconnect, and securing genuine corporate buy-in, let me please welcome our esteemed panelists. Jeanette Boot, partner at WilmerHale, Dr. Milana Hogan, Chief Talent Officer at Sullivan & Cromwell, and Dr. Jen Nielsen, PhD, Employer Services Psychologist and Coach, Intent Clinical. Welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I think that's our cue. I guess. Do you want me to start off, ladies? Do this. Okay. I'm hearing an echo. I don't know if others are. Is that better? Awesome. So, hi, everyone. I can't see you, but you can see me, which is a little startling. I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction, and we each are going to do this, to what our roles are. We each have quite different roles and different experiences. So I am a partner at WilmerHale. I've been a partner here for 20 years almost. And for the last 7 years, another hat that I've worn is the head of the firm's well-being working group. In 2018, the ABA came out with its pledge on lawyer well-being, which is now well-being in the law. They've changed it to be more inclusive of legal professionals and more than just lawyers, which I think is a wonderful development. So we joined the pledge in 2018, not long after it came out. And I asked management to let me take on the role of leading the initiative at the firm. And they very generously agreed. And so at that moment, I was like, oh dear, now I have to do something. And, I'm a lawyer and I care about mental health, but this was not my professional field. And so I did a lot of work personally to upskill in the intervening time, including getting a master's degree in organizational behavior effectively at Cornell School of Industrial and Labor Relations, because I think it's important to understand organizationally how to get things done and what the levers are. I also have become certified to teach mental health first aid, which is a global kind of standardized program to help people learn how to help others, not treat them, but help others get to help. I also have done the coaching training through the Coactive Institute, which teaches people to coach individuals across any aspect of life, so more than just career coaching. I'm currently in the certification program for that. And I'm also currently doing training to become an organizational and teams coach. So you can tell I like to collect certifications and degrees. That's part of being a lawyer, I think. But also, I think it's important for the people in this space to bring professionalism in order to help management understand why this is an important thing to do and back it up with facts and knowledge. So I think that's enough of an introduction. We've done a lot of stuff at the firm and continue to do stuff, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I'm happy to go next if that works. So my name is Milana Hogan. I am at Sullivan & Cromwell, and I've been working at the firm for 18 years. I'm in my 19th year now. Along the way, I got my doctorate in education with a focus on work-based learning and trying to create the right conditions to help people thrive and to learn as quickly as possible, which is really what we're all hoping all of our new and experienced lawyers will do on a daily basis. Hopefully everyone comes in and learns something new. In the course of those 18 years, I have worked in many different areas within the firm. I came in to head up associate development and worked on our staffing systems and mentoring programs, and then sort of expanded from there into training and development, and reviews and performance evaluations, and then traditional HR, and then added recruiting. I now have oversight of our legal assistants, paralegals, analysts, secretaries, etc. So the benefit of that particular path is that I've sort of seen how wellness plays out in each of these spaces. And I am a firm believer in the fact that you need to approach it from multiple different angles, and you can't have a standalone wellness function and expect that to be effective. So while I do not have any of the wellness credentials that Jen and Jeanette have here, I do have the operational experience having run these different teams and sort of seeing the impact of lack of wellness in various spaces and over time. So one of the things that I think is good about this panel is we're all bringing different perspectives. So mine would be as a chief talent officer with oversight of those different functions, and hopefully I can help add some color and some insight into how they might work together comprehensively to help support your wellness initiative.
Great. Thanks, Milana. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Jen Nielsen. I work for Intent Clinical. It's a behavioral health services company based out of Boston. We have a number of departments, but I work specifically for the Employer Services Division. And I am currently an embedded clinician at Synchrony Financial, headquartered here in Stamford, Connecticut. I work as a psychologist providing therapy on site 2 days a week, as well as virtual therapy. And for Intent, I also act as a coach, a wellness coach for other organizations, law firms, and other financial firms. And I also do a little bit of case management and family coaching as part of our other divisions of Intent Clinical. My background is really in clinical and school and child psychology. I've been in the field for, about 30 years between training and employment. And I hold a bachelor's in psychology from the University of Michigan. In case we have any Wolverines out there, go blue. I just have to say it. I have a master's in education and a master's in applied behavioral analysis along the way, as well as the doctorate in psychology for school clinical psych. So I've worked in inpatient, outpatient, residential settings. I have my own very small part-time private practice working with people across the lifespan and across diagnoses. And of course, I work at Intent Clinical full-time, and it's really, I am the boots on the ground. I am the one, as part of a pilot program for the first year at Synchrony Financial, trying to carry out this embedded clinician idea. As part of kind of like an offshoot of the relationship that Intent and Synchrony already had through their wellness coaching that came about as a result of the pandemic. And Synchrony has been engaging in the wellness coaching business here with Intent for about 5 years now. And again, in the last year or so, based on survey results from summer interns here at Synchrony, the need and the desire for on-site therapy arose, and Synchrony asked if Intent Clinical could do that, and we said, sure, absolutely. We're happy to roll it out and happy to try. And so that person is me. And we've learned so much over the last year about what people want, what people are concerned about, how to roll this program out gently, yet and respecting boundaries, but still trying to break down the barriers and stigma. So it has been really quite a learning experience, and it's been kind of a crash course along the way, but I feel like it has been ultimately very successful. And I really credit, the folks and guidance at Intent Clinical, and obviously the folks here at Synchrony Financial. So I guess my role here today is to talk a little bit about the do's and maybe the do nots, the things that have worked well and the things that, could have gone differently, and, strategizing how to problem solve around those things. So happy to answer any questions about rollout, utilization, and things like that.
So I have to say, just to put in a personal plug, I have had personal experience with Intent Clinical, and what I love about them and what I have been proselytizing is the importance of bespoke treatment, bespoke organizational interaction and that kind of thing, because one size fits all doesn't work. And I think a lot of EAP programs are wonderful, but they tend to be more cookie cutter. And there are now concierge services, Intent Clinical being one, that helps bring a higher level of service to professional organizations. So that's my plug. The thing that Jen kind of brought up that I wanted to put a little more emphasis on is the role of junior people in driving attention from organizations on mental health and well-being. And I have a little bit of data that I'm going to talk about and not like put up on a screen because I don't want to distract you or get in the weeds. But an organization called Mind Forward Alliance, which is based in the UK and is focused on putting real information, metrics, and numbers behind how to support mental health in the workplace. They did a survey, a global survey recently that has a US component, obviously. And part of what they focused on was mental health in an intergenerational workforce. And as we all know, like there are different age groups and cohorts within the law firm and legal industry, ranging from Gen Z with our newer associates and younger people, all the way up through the baby boomers, although most of them are now retiring. So what the research showed is that, first of all, the mental health, reported mental health challenges or distress is substantially higher among Gen Z and millennials than it is in Gen X and the boomers. And whether that's actually true or not, I think is not the point. It's people in their lived experiences report that, that's how they have experienced the world. And I think also the personal mental health that people have reported also, is the same way. It's worse on the Gen Z side and all the way down to A-OK among the boomers. And then like more focused on workplace mental health, it's kind of interesting because Gen Z reports a very high level of thinking that mental health is important to their employers, that there is a culture that's open to discussions about it, that their employers provide support. And the thing that I find interesting, because people are in the same place generally, same organization, is that level of optimism or belief in the importance of mental health, to their leadership, to their organization, lack of stigma, et cetera, declines through the generations. And so I think what's important to kind of take away from that is that there is a disconnect between both the lived experience of our newer employees, as well as the perception of their employers and what matters to their employers. So I wanted to kind of set the table for that, because I think a lot of how we can be the most, sort of helpful in bridging the gap is by centering the fact that there is a generational divide and not having it be, the young people just need to suck it up or the old people just don't get it, but to have a real meaningful understanding of the different perspectives and needs. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I'm happy to chime in a little bit on that. I work very directly with a lot of Gen Z folks, here on site, as well as, in my other roles that I hold. One of the things that, I really believe in is that we talk so much to, upper management and just those more seasoned, employees about understanding Gen Z, and we need to meet Gen Z where they are at, which is like, oh, so important. However, I feel like Gen Z might not be necessarily getting the same level of education about, the more seasoned folks who have, been around and embracing that, like, the grind set. And, I applaud Gen Z for, really embracing self-care and boundaries and limit setting. I noticed that, we're still at, like, each end of the spectrum. And if we could come a little bit more toward the middle, in reading a little bit more about this topic, I did see a suggestion about, of course, in everyone's spare time, to do like a buddying up, like a mentorship, pairing, a more seasoned, employee with a Gen Z, and learning about each other, and really, kind of finding a Gen Z champion in each, department, and, a more seasoned professional in each of their departments, and really spreading the word around about these mentorships between, each age level. That is, one aspect. I have to say, Gen Z, they are doing great with getting their sleep. For sure.
Although they claim they're not. Just to amplify what Jen said, there is a notion of reverse mentoring. And I know, some organizations have implemented this, including some large financial institutions, that does exactly what Jen says, where it's pairing junior people with senior people. But what I find interesting about it is sort of putting the role of mentoring on the junior people as opposed to the senior people. And I've heard mixed reactions from people like in my firm, for example, or in the legal industry about that, because again, like, the juniors expect more from their firms. And so there's a sense that, oh, you're just putting the burden on us. On the other hand, I don't know how a better way, frankly, to encourage communication and understanding, than having the kind of intergenerational mentoring relationship that isn't necessarily or isn't tied to work per se.
One of the things I was also thinking about with Gen Z, and why some of this, mentality, or like increased reporting of anxiety and depression, particularly anxiety, I see a lot of that, and also social anxiety. This is a generation that has grown up always knowing cell phones, for the most part, always having access to social media and technology, which really, can be great and educational. But, that doom scrolling that we all talk about, that really can trigger and maintain levels of anxiety and depression and social comparison. And then, of course, a lot of Gen Z, they were graduating college and going out into the workforce, in the middle of a pandemic. And so they're, in about like the stability of work and literally the number of jobs that are available and the competition for said jobs. There is a tremendous amount of anxiety. And I think that some of that is due to it actually being out there, an increase in people's, understanding of what is out there mental health wise, and, reduce stigma.
I think we were talking yesterday about, the benefits of both approaches, sort of the old school approach where you really take something positive from digging in and being resilient and, finding a way to make something work that may, at the beginning seem impossible. And you really can feel a tremendous sense of pride and accomplishment when you do that. And I have personally done that and felt that and benefited from that. And then the flip side of that being that if you take it too far, that puts you at risk for burnout. If you don't know when to hit the brakes, or you don't know when you just literally need 8 hours of sleep, and it doesn't matter if whatever it is you're working on isn't done, you will all be better. The project will be better. Everything will be better if you take those 8 hours of sleep and get a reset. So I think this idea of reverse mentoring is a really powerful one. Often you see it talked about in terms of technology, like the newer generation. Certainly I see this with my kids. If I don't know how to work the remote, I'm like, here, and they just know how to do it. It's like they're digital natives. They can just click buttons and make whatever work. So you see it in the tech space, but I think the wellness space is really ripe for this as well. I've been on the receiving end of getting a note from somebody who is a Gen Z employee who says, I need a mental health day. And I might have, if I'm really honest about it, that reaction where I'm like, really? We're in the middle of something and it's busy and, I'm not sure this is the best time for it. And then I have had to check myself and say, no, you're someone who believes in the power of this stuff. You understand how important it is. And so now you need to act on that. So I think that's a really powerful thing to do as well. If you're from an older generation as I am, making sure that you have those sort of checks in place. So your knee jerk isn't that, but making sure that everyone has that as well. The junior folks don't always understand where we're coming from. If you've always been rewarded for having pushed through and done the hard thing, and now all of a sudden someone's telling you, no, that's not how it works anymore, that can be disconcerting. So I think we have to have empathy in both directions.
And one thing, I think that is important to think about is, there are plenty of people whose attitude is suck it up, right? And so the question is, how do we incentivize the suck it up people to care about mental health and well-being? And, to put some brass tacks to it, I think, as just intellectually, you can say, well, it's bad for recruiting if you torture your people. You're going to have better retention. You're going to have better performance. You'll have healthier, happier workers who will be more engaged. You won't have as much of an issue with malpractice, for example, because there's a big link between impairment and malpractice. And so, I think this is something I've focused on, but I'm curious, Milana, especially, like, how have you had to work with the naysayers?
Yeah, I think we've been lucky in that our leadership really understands the importance of sort of functioning with a full tool set, which you really need sleep and nutrition and, taking a walk every once in a while to be able to fire on all cylinders. And our leadership has been really good about that. And I think leading from the top is the best and sort of the bare minimum that you need to make this work. Our leadership will talk about that at our new associate orientation. They will say, look, we know that the best lawyers are ones who are well fed, well slept, who have the fuel, who have, the energy that it takes to do the kind of work that we do, which is not easy work. We're working, on a complex, difficult matters that require your full attention, and you cannot give that if those other needs are not being met. So they've been really clear about that. There used to be this sort of older model in the 80s, 90s, where you were, rewarded for never sleeping, as we were talking about earlier, where that was sort of like how you demonstrated your value, is like how little you slept. And now that's really shifted. So we've really benefited from leadership that understands the importance of that, and not just understands that, but speaks about that openly and sort of sets that tone and literally will describe how they physically take care of themselves. And I think that's been really powerful to hear. And then we've tried to sort of support that within the office environment by creating things that may not even seem like traditional wellness initiatives, but creating programs and structures that really allow for you to do all of those things. So we have a gym in the building, and that's nice because sometimes you just have half an hour and you just want to walk. You just want to move your body a little bit, and you can just go walk on a treadmill for 20 minutes and head right back upstairs. We try to serve healthy foods, so that if you need some protein, there's some protein options around. Water bottles are everywhere, not the plastic ones, the environmentally friendly ones. We have all of that readily accessible. And in addition, we really try to support that with the programs that we have in place, like our staffing programs. We have some really good people, professionals who are focused on making sure that the work assignments are distributed in a way that is equitable and fair, and that flags when somebody is maybe working too hard or too much. And you can sort of say to them, hey, this is great. We love the engagement. We know you're committed, but also this is putting you at some risk here. You do need to sleep. And to your point, Jeanette, you need to kind of avoid some of those pitfalls and the dangers of not doing these things, right? The malpractice risk, or, all of that kind of stuff, or the, the harm that those types of repeated behaviors could cause. We've all had to pull an all-nighter once in a while. When it's once in a while, it's okay, but you want to make sure that the other structures are in place. And I think staffing wouldn't traditionally be thought of as an area that does fall under the wellness umbrella, but it does, because if you're doing that really thoughtfully and you're watching engagement and you're checking in with people and you understand who's working on what, and is it a well-rounded experience from a learning perspective, all of those things really can contribute to health and wellness. And so I think, as the chief talent officer, I'm always thinking about that. I'm like, a wellness program exists, again, not as a standalone thing that you do. You can't just put a person there and expect it to work. Everybody has to be rowing in the same direction in every group. And that's, from the top, the leadership, but also leaders of the practice groups. And then even the senior associates, when they're dealing with the junior associates, it really has to be something that is modeled cross firm, cross department. It has to be very, very comprehensive.
And I'll just put some numbers around this back to the Mind Forward Alliance research. They had a couple of interesting things that I think speak to exactly what Milana was saying. One is that they found that where the head of an organization speaks out about well-being in any way, through a email, through actually saying something, but where they express that this is important, the view of whether the employer cares about mental health increases from 36% to 89%. So a dramatic increase, and not particularly surprising. But what I think is surprising to some extent is the worker's desire to quit, just based on that, reduces from 34% down to 23%. So significantly less desire to quit. And 71% of workers say that they would be comfortable telling their line manager about mental health challenges, whereas if the head of the organization doesn't speak out, it drops to 41%. The other thing, and again, what Milana is mentioning, is it isn't just the head of an organization that needs to set the tone. It's everybody who's in any kind of management role. And exactly right, even down to the senior associates, down to paralegals being supervised, everyone on the staff side and their sort of org chart needs to know how to speak to mental health challenges. And back to the research, where managers are trained, and this goes back sort of to mental health first aid, their confidence in supporting their team goes up dramatically, from 50% to almost 80%. And when a manager is well equipped and their people know that they're well equipped to talk about mental health challenges, again, there's an impact on desire to quit, which goes from 40% to 23%. And interestingly, their feelings of lack of interest, motivation, engagement is significantly better with well-equipped managers. So those negative feelings go from 53% down to 33%. So just the mere fact of managers being trained and attentive to the mental health of their underlings, I don't like that word, but that's what comes to mind, has a meaningful impact on performance and engagement. So, to my mind, these are no-brainers, right? These are easy things that can be done that have a meaningful impact on the well-being of people's workforce, and all of the things that go along with that. Jen, I'm curious, what I find so interesting about what you're doing and what I know some other firms are doing is actually embedding counseling, therapy, other forms of medical and mental health support physically in their organizations. And I know there are challenges and, kind of like you said before, do's and don'ts. I'd be curious to hear what your experience has been.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm just looking at one quick question here in the chat about, how to train the mentors and mentees, about those relationships. It really can be to bring in an outside third party to conduct a few presentations, a few webinars, just having everyone hear the same thing at the same time. And of course, Jeanette, applause to you for going out and getting these different certifications and trainings. I think that that's fantastic too. So that's another way to do it. In terms of actually being on site and rolling these initiatives out, I was thinking about what if there was buy-in for everyone? Not just about buy-in for leadership, it's about buy-in for the employees too, and that can look different. Leadership is thinking about ROI, and employees, quite frankly, are thinking about confidentiality. And there are a couple of different ways to do this. And I know that Intent Clinical has partnered very closely with Synchrony to create a safe and welcoming space here. That is one way that we can, get buy-in from the employees. That this, where I'm sitting right now, actually looks like a therapist's office, probably the nicest one I've ever been able to sit in. It has a waiting area. It has materials outside about mental health. I even have Thrive Global, which is, we have these resets. It's calming. We have a calm waiting room. This is a very cozy office space with a couch and chairs. I mean, to completely change the environment, to make it feel like a therapist's office, and to be in, a part of, the offices where it's a little bit less, there's less foot traffic. And I actually schedule my appointments with about a 15-minute cushion in between. So people are not running into each other in the waiting room. And, you run into more people if you're going to therapy in the community. And, to your point earlier about having leadership speak out and to help normalize and remind people that this offering is here, that's so important. And that can be, something like at town halls, or it can be, less direct, just in communications that are dropped, even just quarterly, to say, hey, remember that we have this really unique and special offering here, in terms of that. And so again, that's for the employee buy-in, but for the leadership buy-in, this actually reduces those mental health days, the need to take the mental health days. I don't have the actual data on that, quite frankly, but it is meant to be preventative and proactive instead of reactive and waiting for something to happen. That being said, being on site, we are able to respond to crises in the moment, to consult in the moment. I consult with HR, I consult with facilities, I consult with security here. And then of course I have my scheduled appointments, and I also have, presentations and webinars. I'm invited to do some, and Intent Clinical has created a whole roster of possible presentations, even something as basic as Anxiety 101, Depression 101. That's what we're trying to do, is to teach and give psychology away. Preventing burnout, reducing stress, increasing productivity. That's the employer side again. And like for the employee side, again, we're really working hard to address confidentiality and privacy, even though we're reducing stigma by bringing it here. We're reducing stigma by leadership talking about it. but we're also still very respectful and mindful about how people are feeling about having a therapist on site. Initially, there was a lot of hesitancy until we kept trying to normalize this. And, having leadership talk about it is a direct means. A more indirect means would be through, like, I have a QR code. Very recently, we came up with the idea of, why don't we get a QR code that links to my my outside calendar? I'm not even linked to Synchrony's calendars. I can be, but the appointments go through Calendly. So the QR code links directly to my Calendly. People can schedule, almost on demand, at least in the beginning, but things have really picked up. Things have picked up because we recently added a virtual option. So that, my numbers for in-person and online are really neck and neck, and we're only 2 months in to 2025. So I'm not quite sure which will take the lead, but it has picked up quickly. And people like that too. A lot of people do like coming in. We do obviously have a private enough space, but some people prefer the comfort of their home. And quite frankly, I've had people say to me, I almost didn't make it in today. I just almost couldn't get out of bed. And so now we have that virtual offering, to help with that.
Well, and I will say one thing is that just the mere fact that you exist, right? And that it's not free, right? Your services are not free. The fact that an organization makes that investment in and of itself, even if people don't utilize it, sends a really powerful message about organizations putting their money where their mouth is. Milana, one question I have, or that's really come up in the chat, goes to, how do you incentivize mentors? How do you train them and get them to actually be good mentors? And I'm wondering if you could share what your experience has been with those things.
Yeah, for sure. It's such a good question. And I think, the answer is similar to what we're talking about here, which is not one size fits all. So I think, if you look at sort of the science of motivation and how you can kind of get people to do things, different people are motivated in different ways. So for some, it may be, I'm very practical and I have limited time in the day and I need to understand the value proposition. And for people like that, Jeanette's data and similar data is incredibly helpful. You're saying, this is why, even if you're not motivated by the fact that this is the right thing to do, here is why this will work for you. If you want to get employees who are engaged, who show up for you, who are reliable, who are consistent, you need to manage them in this way, right? You need to be sort of empathy forward. You need to do all of these things that we've been talking about doing. And so sometimes it's just sort of building the business case and presenting that to them and making sure that people understand what is the return on my investment. I have limited time. What am I going to get out of this? What's my incentive to invest in this and to really care about this? For other people, they're very motivated by the idea of sort of doing the right thing. They really genuinely care. And if you communicate the ways in which people suffer when you don't do this, that is really motivating, right? And I think a lot of people fall into that camp where we want to treat people well and we want to be treated well. And so you want to sort of, pay that forward in a cultural way, right? You want to treat someone really kindly. So when you're the person who can't get out of bed, somebody pays that back to you and says, yes, no worries, we've got it, rest up and we'll pick this up tomorrow. So, I think that's really helpful. We, in addition to the data Jeanette shared, I worked on a project with the ABA that was focused on, how can you sort of create really effective teams? We saw similar outcomes in that, if you're sort of not managing in a way that is respectful of people's mental health, you will have people who act with their feet, who quit, who leave. And disproportionately, women are more likely to do that than men, at least in our data set that we found. And, that's really important. I know all law firms and organizations are focused on retaining women at the highest level. And so that's an important finding, I think, to be aware of as well from a data perspective. It's nobody likes it. So we should do it for everyone. But, women are often more likely to leave if they're not getting that kind of support. So I think that's an important element as well. So you're modeling it, you're just kind of attacking it from every angle. Again, going back to that idea of motivational theory, you can't just do one thing. You need to make the business case for some, you need to make maybe more of the personal or emotional case. And then over time, people learn that this works. If you look at the firms, if I were to sort of identify who I think are the very, very best managers in the firm, they are unequivocally behaving in this way, right? And so I think people kind of pick that up over time. They realize, hey, if I don't treat people in this way, I'm not going to have, and I don't like this term either, but I'll use it, like followers. People are not going to be like wanting to get on board with me and what I'm doing. They're not going to want to help me. And that's what you need. If you're going to succeed in a law firm environment, you have to be able to attract people to your team who want to work for you, who are committed to you, who are willing to give what it takes. And it's hard. This is a hard job. There's easier professions for sure, right? And so this is a challenging thing. And if you want that kind of commitment, you have to be committed to them in the same way. So I would say sort of hit it from a lot of different angles and hope that, that motivation, you can tap into the motivation for each of your employees, recognizing that they're all individuals and we all are motivated in different ways.
So one thing I will say, I'm not going to out any firm or put anyone on the spot, but I know that there are some firms that have put their money where their mouth is, again, by providing hours credit, billable hours credit for people to attend to their mental health or take a wellness day. And I think some firms also give that same kind of credit for mentoring and being mentored. So to my mind, those are both important, ways to incentivize people to provide that support and to take advantage of the support. And an extraordinarily radical idea that probably won't happen anywhere, but I'm going to put it out there, is God forbid partners' compensation might be affected by things like upward evaluations or by the number of hours that they spend or don't spend in mentoring activities. This is something that I don't know if anyone's going to do, but I think, some people are motivated by money. Let's just say it. And putting your money where your mouth is in terms of how you compensate or reward people, I think is a tool that is probably underutilized. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we've had an upward review system for a really long time in the firm, and I think that has contributed to this because it is that we were sort of early adopters of this idea of upward review feedback, that the associates and senior associates would be able to give feedback to senior associates and partners, and that is checked every 6 months. They're invited to provide feedback, and they do. They engage in the process, and it's it is anonymous, so it allows them to say what they feel they need to say. And I think even the idea that this is being looked at and that is part of the conversation that people are having at year end about how they're doing, includes how well they're managing and whether they're sort of meeting the goals that we've set forth and have articulated and anyone can read and see, is really powerful. So I think if you're not measuring or paying attention or signaling that you're paying attention, then you are putting yourself at some risk. So I really do agree with that.
So it looks like we're close to the end of our time. I see a question though that's come in about how to encourage juniors to actually seek help and ask for PTO if that's something that they need. And I know personally what I have done and what our firm has done is made it very clear that people are important and their mental health and well-being is important, and they will not suffer consequences, God forbid, for taking the time that they need to help themselves. And we, obviously, I say obviously, our firm offers short-term disability leave, and we have flexibility among our staffing people to move people on and off of matters. I think you will always unfortunately have to deal with some people feeling that there's a stigma, or perhaps some leaders actually not being as understanding as they should be. But, I think there are ways to help people feel comfortable taking time for themselves. I don't know, Jen or Milana, if you have more to add.
I think that comes down to leadership too. Like I was thinking, Jeanette, as you were saying, encouraging folks to take those days to take care of themselves. How, what does that look like? In real time, is that leadership sharing that? Is it, messaging, like, there's digital signage, at least here at Synchrony, talking about services. It's in the cultures of, the culture of the companies. It's talking about it, mentioning it, even just quickly in passing. We've got to normalize it. And, it sometimes comes from a trusted manager if you have that relationship, but I feel like it needs to be outside of that. Not everyone has a great, mentoring type of relationship or that great manager relationship. Even just, again, we've put our QR codes around the building in strategic places. If you have a gym, maybe that's a place where, a little be kind to your mind, seek help, something like that. Like a little sign goes up in the gym. Restrooms might be a little bit invasive, but it's also very discreet. So you have to think about where people would see these messages. Not everyone is so quick to offer those messages, depending on where you stand on mental health and depending on your stance in, the grind set or, self-care. So making it visible to people, that's how we learn best, is hearing it, seeing it, and not hearing it, saying it. Ashley, you're muted.
You're muted, yeah.
Sorry, you think I would have learned the first time, but thank you ladies so much. Truly such a fantastic presentation. And we really appreciate you taking the time to share your practical and valuable insights. And thank you to our audience also for sharing so many comments and questions. Your engagement has been great this morning. So let's keep this interaction going during our next Stretch Focus session. And I will see you there. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.